Biden is a strong supporter, as am I, of Israel. But he also has been, for a long time, as many of us have been, a strong supporter of a two-state solution, respectful of the needs and aspirations of the Palestinian people. He's also been the strongest advocate for humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians, which was resisted by many in the House of Representatives on the Republican side. So he has been their champion, but for some reason, and I don't know what the motivation is, they decided genocide Joe, this or that. And so that makes me question some of the motivation of some of them. Mostly it's spontaneous, it's organic, it's sincere, and it's to be respected. But it also has to not be anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, which could be interpreted that way. They have a right to criticize Israel, as we all do, but we also have a right to be safe as we do so.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Nancy Pelosi, who did an interview with MSNBC discussing the current state of the Democrat Party, which is not good, okay? I mean, I've covered the current collapse of the Democrat Party in a lot of detail. I don't need to go into that, right? But during this interview, Nancy Pelosi is going to be confronted with an inconvenient fact in the middle of her Trump deranged rant, in which she talks about how Biden's economy is so great. And the number that they use the most to basically show evidence that the Biden economy is great, despite the fact that nobody actually feels like the economy is good, is the fake job growth numbers under the Biden administration. Now, this host at MSNBC is going to do something that you rarely see from an MSNBC host, which is to push back against a Democrat when they're making false or exaggerated claims, which Katy made the mistake of doing. And Nancy Pelosi instantly snaps on this woman, essentially accusing her of being a Donald Trump apologist for simply stating a fact that, hey, you're exaggerating about Biden's job growth numbers, because a lot of the jobs that you guys are citing as being created by Biden actually are just jobs that were recovered due to the pandemic. And again, Nancy Pelosi didn't like that. Take a look.
It isn't what Bill Barr's interpretation is if he thought he heard it or didn't hear it. What it's important is what Donald Trump has said. Donald Trump is a great threat to our democracy. What is a democracy? What are the pillars? What are the pillars? A free and independent press to tell the story of what's going on, to keep everybody informed of what people are saying and doing. That transparency is essential. An independent judiciary, when they're practically threatening on TV exposure of jurors in a trial of the president or any trial, and any of that. What is an independent judiciary? It's about free and fair elections. And what do they do but suppress the vote? So there's nothing in his performance, if that's the word we'll use, what he has done, that would indicate that he cares, prioritizes, or ever valued or did anything to support a democracy. And now on the ballot saying he should have immunity from whatever he might do. I mean, really, I have sympathy and respect for everybody who votes. I'm just glad people vote. I know some of them will always reject those of us who might look different to them in leadership or the rest, and that's that. But there are those who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future? And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And he has the worst.
I don't think that anybody can accuse me of that.
But let me just say, as a Speaker of the House, we put forth a $3 trillion bill. $3 trillion of investment in communities and the rest, and that stimulates the economy.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. What I find to be hilarious about that exchange from Nancy Pelosi and this MSNBC propagandist, because best believe she's in the bag for the Democrat Party, right? But if you're not all the way in the bag for the Democrat Party to the point where you just let Nancy Pelosi spout nonsense about how Biden has created 9 million jobs, then apparently you are a Trump apologist, okay? Which you're not allowed to be on MSDNC. You're only allowed to be a Biden apologist, okay? You're only allowed to support Biden. In fact, if you push back against any of the exaggerations and lies from Democrats with facts, right, that don't support their narrative, then yeah, you're a Trump apologist. That's what you are, okay? You're in bed with Trump, according to Nancy Pelosi, which again, it's so funny because first and foremost, again, like that woman said correctly, a lot of those jobs come from the pandemic, the recovery from the pandemic, okay? When Trump was in office and the pandemic first hit, we lost 20 million jobs. Now, when Trump had left office, we had recovered over half of those jobs. There were still 9 million or so jobs that were yet to be recovered. So we were already recovering jobs heavily while Trump was in office. Now, in the Biden administration, there's been 14.5 million jobs created. But again, if you account for the fact that 9 million of those jobs were jobs that were lost during the pandemic under Trump, not because it was his fault. It's quite literally because Democrat states shut down their economies. You have 9 million jobs that were going to be recovered, right? They were on pace to be recovered after Trump left office, regardless of who would have been president at the time, okay? These are recovery jobs, okay? 9 million of them, which again, they're blaming Trump for that job loss. They're saying, well, Trump is the worst president when it comes to jobs. It's like, well, Trump doesn't have anything to do with Democrats choosing to shut down their states. Trump doesn't have anything to do with the fact that this once in a lifetime pandemic caused the country to have to shut down. Again, what policy would you have done differently, right? How would Democrats have prevented all those job losses if Democrats were the main ones pushing for shutdowns and lockdowns during the pandemic? Again, I don't understand why they're never asked this question, right? They're never asked what alternative would you have done differently than Trump that would have resulted in a better outcome. I guarantee you they don't have an answer, right? They don't have an answer except spending more government money, right? Which would have led to an even bigger disaster than what we already had. But again, if you look at the amount of jobs under the Biden administration that we have now versus the peak that we had before the pandemic when Trump was in office, is only 5.6 million or so more jobs. And that becomes even less impressive when you account for the fact that a good amount of those jobs are being subsidized by a record number of government jobs, which means that the Biden administration is quite literally inflating the job numbers, because what we're saying is that while these job numbers are going up and they're impressive, a lot of these jobs, again, are being created by the Biden administration, not in the sense that their economic policies are creating the jobs, but more so quite literally the government is creating the job. So again, it's artificial. At the same time, what you see happening is that in the private sector, the real economy that's not being subsidized by the government, you're seeing job losses. This is why you're seeing such good job numbers from Biden. But yet we have all these stories about mass layoffs in certain sectors of the economy like tech. Well, again, the reason why is because the jobs that aren't being subsidized by the government directly, they're suffering, right? We have 1.5% GDP growth, which is a disaster, right? For Biden supposedly having such a great economy. This is why a lot of things are not adding up when it comes to the numbers. The fact that we have record inflation, again, GDP growth is slowing down, which signals stagflation, okay, a bad economy. You have interest rates at the highest they've been in years. But yet, again, you keep seeing all of these top line great numbers, job growth. Well, because the government quite literally is creating fake jobs, okay? Let's read here. In 2023, the U.S. job market experienced a trend where nearly 25% of all job gains were attributed to government positions, underscoring a significant reliance on public sector employment to sustain economic growth. This development is particularly striking given the broader context of a thriving economy, marked by impressive job additions and the robust performance of the tech sector. Despite these broader economic successes, the surge in government jobs reveals a nuanced landscape of employment, raising questions about the sustainability and quality of job growth. Employment gains in government span the federal, state, and local levels, with a substantial increase in hiring compared to the previous year. This surge is partly a response to the vacancies left by public servants who exited their roles during the pandemic, alongside efforts to bolster public services that may have been understaffed or overwhelmed in the preceding years. Three industries account for 83% of the job growth, along with government jobs: healthcare, which also is heavily government subsidized, right? So AKA the government, okay? And the hospitality industry make up the majority of new jobs. Hospitality jobs are often plagued with low pay and unsustainable positions. Yeah, so what you see here, okay, is 83% of job growth that Biden brags about so much. A vast majority of it is literally the government. Healthcare, which again is the government, okay, considering how much we subsidize healthcare, and hospitality, which are not like good jobs, right? These are not high quality jobs. So when you look at the real economy, on the other hand, you're seeing something a little bit different. The trend towards increased government employment comes at a time when the private sector, particularly in technology and finance, faces a wave of layoffs, indicating a shift in the labor market dynamics. High-profile tech companies have announced significant job cuts, contrasting sharply with the government's hiring spree. This juxtaposition highlights a complex picture of the current economic situation, where certain sectors thrive while others recalibrate in response to evolving market demands and strategic priorities. Yeah, so again, what you have happening here is that the government is subsidizing a lot of the so-called job growth under the Biden administration. Again, these are fake jobs. And when this happens, that signals a recession, right? And that's essentially what we've seen throughout history. And this is outlined here pretty nicely in this article from the Mises Institute from Ryan McMakin. And I'm actually going to link this article in the description so you guys can reference it anytime you have to argue with somebody about Biden's fake economy and his job growth numbers, because again, this is not a good thing. So let's read here. Since early 2021, however, the job growth we're seeing has been increasingly fueled by growth in government sector jobs. In other words, the job growth we do see in the government sector does not represent the result of private investment, saving, or demand. It's not organic economic growth. Rather, these government positions are positions that only exist as a result of wealth transferred from the private sector to the government sector. Government-funded jobs are not drivers of growth. They are obstacles to growth, as stated by Ludwig von Mises. Looking at month-to-month job growth since 2021, the graph shows government jobs as a percentage of all new job growth. This has accelerated over the past 6 months, as government job growth has comprised from 21% to 58% over that period. Again, so when you have the government creating 20 to 50% of the jobs, again, how does that indicate that the economy is so great, right? This is why you can't say that the economy is great based off Biden's fake numbers. You really can't. Indeed, over the past year, from December 2022 to December 2023, private sector jobs grew at half the pace of government jobs, with private sector payrolls rising 1.5%. During that time, government payrolls increased 3%. The relationship between government jobs and private sector jobs can also indicate approaching recessions in many cases. Here is a graph that shows year-over-year growth in private sector jobs and government jobs, each as a proportion of all job growth. We can see how, in numerous cases, the proportion of all jobs that is private tends to deteriorate as recession approaches. For example, as the 1991-1992 recession approached, we see that new government jobs became a larger and larger share of all new jobs during 1990 and 1991. Government jobs made up about 20% of all new job growth in early 1990s, but by December of that year, government jobs has provided about half of all new job growth. We can clearly see a similar trend with the lead up to the Great Recession. Private sector jobs began to collapse as nearly as late 2006, even though government job creation continued to buoy overall job growth in that period. Okay, so again, we're seeing some of the same trends that we saw leading up to the Great Recession, okay, and other recessions that we had in the economy that we're seeing right now. Okay, the government artificially inflating our economic numbers, but yet when you look at certain numbers again like GDP growth, we're lagging. Okay, when you see inflation, inflation is soaring. We're in stagflation. That's clearly and obviously what's happening. But again, everybody keeps talking about Biden's fake job growth numbers that are fueled by government spending, right? So again, if you take out all of the fake jobs from the government, Biden's job report, it don't look good, right? Don't look good at all. During times of strong economic growth, we find that government jobs rarely comprise more than 20% of all new jobs since September of this year. However, government jobs has taken up more than 20% of all new jobs in each month. In December, government jobs reached 24.9% of all new jobs. That's the largest proportion since the COVID pandemic in March 2020. Yeah, so overall, what we have here is that we are in a private sector recession, no doubt. Okay. However, because of the government spending and the artificial jobs numbers being created by the Biden administration, again, through government jobs, that is masking the fact that the private sector is stagnating and shrinking, right? Again, that is why the mainstream liberal media keeps talking about how the economy is so great using these fake numbers, but yet you have all these stories about these mass layoffs. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Well, we know why it doesn't make sense, because the government quite literally is masking what is happening, what is actually really happening, okay? And they're spending so much money, they're creating so much fake jobs and fake employment that it makes it look like we have good economic trends going on when, again, we really have a recession. And that is why a lot of people are saying that, yeah, I don't feel like the economy is great despite the good numbers on paper, right? Because, again, the numbers are fake. So, hey, I just find it to be hilarious how Nancy Pelosi got so triggered by this host just pushing back a little bit, right, against her claim. And she's the same person that talks about how we need a free press, but it seems to me that MSDNC is not the free press, right? They are not the free press at all, okay? Because when they push back against Democrats, Nancy Pelosi pulls out that whip, right, and reminds them who they work for, okay, which is Democrat Party. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.